Have you ever felt like the harder you try to hold on to a man, the more distant he becomes? Like every message, every effort, every little attempt to keep him interested just seems to push him further away. It's frustrating, it's exhausting, and worst of all, it makes you feel powerless in your own relationship. But what if I told you that the key to making him value you isn't chasing him, proving your worth, or giving more? What if the real secret is detachment? Yes, detachment, not in a coldo or heartless way, but in a way that allows you to remain independent, respected, and deeply attractive without losing yourself in love. When you stop needing his attention, when you stop letting his actions dictate your emotions, something powerful happens. He starts noticing you again. He starts chasing you. Because high-value women don't beg for love, they inspire it. In today's video, I'll show you how the wisdom of Stoic philosophy can transform the way you approach love and relationships. By mastering detachment, you'll not only reclaim your emotional independence, but also create an irresistible presence that naturally draws him in. So tell me, have you ever felt like you were giving too much in a relationship while he kept pulling away? Drop your story in the comments below, and let's get into it. You won't want to miss what's coming next. One, detachment means owning yourself. She thought she had everything. A man she adored, a future she imagined, a love she believed was unbreakable. But the more she gave, the more he pulled away. She sacrificed her time, her passions, even her sense of self, all in the name of love. And yet, he never seemed satisfied. His attention drifted. His affection became unpredictable. She waited by her phone, read too much into his silence, and tried harder to prove her worth. But nothing changed. Until one day, she realized the painful truth. The more she held on, the more she lost. It feels unfair, doesn't it? That love, something so deep, so consuming, could make you feel so powerless. But love is never meant to be a transaction where you give endlessly, hoping for something in return. Love, when real, should never require you to abandon yourself. When you attach your happiness to one person, you don't love them, you depend on them. And dependency is not attraction, it is suffocating, desperate, fragile. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology confirmed it. Epictetus once said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." Love is no different. The moment you need someone to complete you, you lose your own foundation. Detachment is not about walking away from love. It's about walking away from the idea that someone else holds the key to your happiness. Emma learned this the hard way. She loved passionately, fiercely, with every part of her soul. She rearranged her life for him, made excuses when he was distant, and forgave his inconsistency because she believed in their potential. And yet, he was never fully present. She spent nights wondering why he didn't text back, analyzing his every word, trying to be what she thought he wanted. But the harder she tried, the less he seemed to care. One evening, she looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself. Where was the woman who once loved art, who thrived in deep conversations, who radiated confidence without needing validation? She had traded herself for his attention. And in that moment, she knew she had to reclaim her power. She stopped texting first, stopped waiting for his calls, stopped making him the center of her world. Instead, she turned inward. She booked a solo trip she had always dreamed of. She reconnected with old friends. She poured herself into her passions, and something strange happened. The more she embraced her independence, the more magnetic she became. He noticed. His messages became more frequent. His interest reignited. But this time, Emma wasn't the same woman who once hung on to his every word. She no longer sought his validation because she had found something greater, herself. And suddenly, the power dynamic shifted. She was no longer waiting for him to choose her. She had already chosen herself. When you become the kind of woman who doesn't need to chase, you become the kind of woman he doesn't want to lose. It's the paradox of attraction. Men don't fall for the ones who need them. They fall for the ones who are perfectly fine without them. A high-value woman isn't defined by a man's attention. She is defined by the way she carries herself, the way she owns her presence, and the way she moves through the world with quiet, undeniable confidence. Think of the ocean. It does not beg for anyone to admire it. It simply exists in its vastness, its depth, its mystery. And yet, people travel the world just to see it, to feel its power. to be in its presence. That is the energy of detachment. It does not push love away. It simply refuses to grasp it too tightly. There is freedom in knowing that you are enough, and that your happiness does not hinge on a single person's actions. There is a power in being able to love deeply while remaining whole. And when you embody that power, you don't just attract love, you attract the right kind of love. The kind that doesn't demand your sacrifice. The kind that doesn't require you to shrink yourself. The kind that sees you, values you, and meets you at your level. Most women fear that if they stop trying, they will lose him. But the truth is, if effort is the only thing holding him, he was never really yours to begin with. A man who truly wants to be with you will move mountains, not watch you carry them alone. And so, detachment isn't about giving up on love. It's about giving up on the version of love that makes you abandon yourself. Because the moment you stop placing your worth in someone else's hands, you take it back. And that is when everything changes. 2. You are already complete. You've been told your whole life that love is about finding the one. That somewhere out there is a man who will complete you, who will fill the missing pieces of your heart, who will make you whole. It sounds beautiful, doesn't it? Except it's a lie. Because the moment you believe you need someone to complete you, you give away your power. You place your happiness, your confidence, and your entire sense of self in the hands of another person. And when that person pulls away, you don't just lose them, you lose yourself. But here's the truth. You are not half of a whole. You are already whole. The love of a man should never define your worth, and his absence should never make you feel like you are lacking something. You do not need him to feel valuable, to feel radiant, to feel alive. You were born enough. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." Love should be a choice, not a necessity. A beautiful addition, not your foundation. When you realize this, everything changes. Imagine standing in front of a mirror, not looking for flaws, not searching for validation, but simply seeing yourself, whole, complete, radiant. A woman who does not seek completion but embraces herself fully. That is the kind of energy that captivates. That is the kind of woman who doesn't chase love but attracts it effortlessly. Sophia learned this the hard way. For years she believed that being single meant she was failing at life. She watched her friends settle down, saw the couples on social media, and convinced herself that happiness was something she could only find in the arms of a man. So she searched. She dated. She ignored red flags, accepted less than she deserved, and gave too much too soon. And yet, no matter how much effort she put in, nothing ever felt right. Then came the breakup that shattered her. The kind that leaves you staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., wondering if you'll ever feel whole again. She cried, she grieved, she felt lost. But somewhere in that emptiness, a thought emerged. What if I stopped searching? What if I started living? So she did. She booked a solo trip to Italy. She walked through the streets of Rome and tasted the richness of life without waiting for someone to share it with. She took dance classes, started reading books that had nothing to do with relationships, and spent nights under the stars falling in love with herself. And then something incredible happened. She stopped feeling lonely. She stopped waking up with a sense of lack. She realized she was not missing anything because she had never been incomplete in the first place. Months later, when she met Liam, she was no longer the woman who needed love. She was a woman who chose it. She didn't seek validation in his attention. She didn't wait by her phone, analyze his every word, or lose herself in the relationship. And Liam? He had never met a woman like her. A woman who didn't need him, but wanted him. That kind of confidence is magnetic. Think of a lighthouse. It does not chase ships. It does not call out, begging to be seen. It simply stands tall, shining its light. And because of that, ships are drawn to it, not because they are forced, but because they want to be. That is who you become when you understand that you are already whole. You stop running, stop grasping, stop fearing love's absence. You do not need to prove your worth, because it is already within you. And when a man comes into your life, he will not complete you. He will complement you. You will be drawn to the woman who radiates independence, strength, and grace. Seneca once said, "If you live in harmony with nature, you will never be poor." If you live according to what others think, you will never be rich. Stop searching for your worth in the eyes of another. You are not an unfinished puzzle waiting to be solved. You are a masterpiece, just as you are. And the moment you realize that, the world shifts. You walk differently, you speak differently, you glow. And in that glow, the right man will see you. Not because you chased him, not because you convinced him, but because you simply are. 3. Accept every outcome instead of controlling it. You feel it slipping away, that connection, that sense of security, that belief that if you just try a little harder, give a little more, things will fall into place. But the harder you hold on, the more it unravels. You analyze every message, second-guess every silence, replay conversations in your mind, searching for the exact moment when he started pulling away. But love isn't something you control. It's not a puzzle you solve or an equation you balance. The more you try to grip it tightly, the more fragile it becomes. And that's the paradox. Detachment is not about giving up, but about letting things unfold as they are meant to. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about your neighbors, unless with a view to some mutual benefit." In love, this wisdom is everything. Overanalyzing someone's feelings, trying to predict their next move, or living in fear of an outcome you cannot control will only rob you of your peace. Imagine a river. It does not resist the current, it flows. It does not force its way through obstacles. It moves around them. The moment you learn to flow with life, instead of against it, is the moment you reclaim your power. Lana used to be afraid of risking what she had. She had feelings for her best friend but never dared to express them. She feared rejection, feared losing the friendship, feared that once the words were spoken, everything would change. So she stayed silent, convincing herself that as long as she kept her emotions hidden, she could preserve what they had. But the weight of unspoken feelings is heavy. It lingers in every conversation, in every glance held a second too long, in every goodbye that feels unfinished. One day she asked herself a simple question: what if I stopped worrying about the outcome? What if I just honored my feelings without expecting anything in return? So she did. One evening, as they sat watching the city lights, she spoke. Not with desperation, not with expectation, but with honesty. "I just want you to know, I have feelings for you. I don't need you to say anything, I don't need this to change anything, I just want to be honest with myself." And then silence. Not the kind that drowns you, but the kind that opens space for something new. He looked at her, really looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time. And for the first time, he allowed himself to feel something too. The moment Lana let go of her need for control, the dynamic shifted. He started noticing her in ways he hadn't before. Not because she forced it, but because she freed herself from the invisible chains of fear. There is something breathtakingly attractive about a woman who is unafraid of truth. A woman who does not need a certain response to validate her feelings. A woman who can love without losing herself in the process. She becomes an energy, a force like the sun shining regardless of who stands in its light. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." And in love, bravery is not in chasing, not in strategizing, not in controlling. It is in the willingness to be vulnerable, to express, and to trust that whatever happens, you will be okay. If you spend your time trying to control a relationship, you will always live in fear. Fear of saying the wrong thing, fear of losing him, fear of not being enough. But when you detach from the outcome, you stop operating from fear and start operating from strength. There is a power in knowing that you will be fine, whether he stays or whether he goes. A beauty in being able to express love without needing it to be returned in a certain way. A freedom in surrendering to life's unpredictability, trusting that whatever is meant for you will find its way to you. And when you embrace that freedom, you no longer wait anxiously for a reply. No longer mold yourself to fit someone else's expectations. No longer cling to relationships that do not nurture your soul. You become the kind of woman who walks through life with ease, knowing that her worth is not tied to any one person. That is the woman who captures attention without even trying. The woman who men remember long after she has left the room. The woman who, without effort, makes them chase. For perspective shift. Not everything is a big deal. The mind has a way of making small things feel massive, One message, one delayed response, one unexpected silence. Suddenly, it's not just a text, it's a signal, a warning, a shift in the universe. The anxiety creeps in. Why hasn't he answered? Did I say something wrong? Is he losing interest? You check your phone every few minutes, hoping, waiting, and overanalyzing. You tell yourself you don't care, but deep down, you do, and it starts to control you. But take a step back. What are you really reacting to? The situation itself, or the story your mind is creating about it? Marcus Aurelius once said, "If you are troubled by anything external, it is not the thing itself that disturbs you, but your judgment about it. And it is in your power to wipe out that judgment now." This is where detachment begins, not in ignoring emotions, but in refusing to let them rule you. When you stop seeing every small moment in love as a test of your worth, you become free. Imagine you are the ocean. Does the tide panic when the waves pull back? Does it beg the water to return? No. It knows the waves will come and go, that they are meant to rise and fall. And yet the ocean remains, vast, powerful, untouched. That is how you should move through love. Anna once gave too much power to the little things. She met a guy she really liked. He was charming, confident, everything she found attractive. They texted for days, late-night conversations that made her heart race. She felt a connection, one that seemed real. Then one night, she sent him a message. Nothing big, just something casual. He saw it, but he didn't reply. At first, she ignored the feeling of unease, but as the hours stretched into a day, then two, her thoughts spiraled. Was I too forward? Did I say something wrong? The uncertainty gnawed at her. Every vibration of her phone made her jump, her mind clinging to the hope that it was him. And when it wasn't, disappointment hit harder each time. Then, something shifted. She caught herself in the middle of the overthinking. Why am I doing this? She asked herself. Why am I giving so much importance to one message? She put down her phone and walked outside. She met her friends for dinner and laughed until her stomach hurt. She lost herself in a book. Let the words pull her away from the mental loops she had created. And slowly, something incredible happened. The anxiety faded. The waiting stopped feeling urgent. She realized that one unanswered message did not define her worth. And then, his name lit up her screen. A simple text, a casual excuse for the delay. But by then, something in her had already changed. She no longer needed his response. She had already reclaimed her peace. This is the power of detachment. When you stop treating every small delay, every silence, every uncertain moment as something life-altering, you regain control over your emotions. You stop chasing clarity where it isn't needed. You stop letting temporary moments dictate your self-worth. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And isn't that what happens in love? We build stories in our minds, stories of rejection, stories of disappointment, stories that make us feel like we are losing something. But most of the time, these stories aren't even real. They are fears disguised as facts. Most of what you are anxious about today won't even matter a year from now. And yet, you let it steal your peace. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop over-investing in things that do not deserve your energy. Think of a woman who walks into a room with quiet confidence. She does not glance at her phone every 5 minutes and does not let unanswered texts control her mood. She does not shrink into insecurity when a man pulls back. She understands something deeper, that her worth is not dependent on any one person's attention, that she is the prize, not an option. That is the kind of woman men remember. The kind they chase, not because she plays games, but because she truly values herself. A high-value woman knows this. Her time, her energy, and her emotional well-being are not to be wasted on insignificant worries. She does not crumble over a delayed reply. She does not let a fleeting moment shake her sense of self. She simply moves with grace, with certainty, with the kind of quiet power that commands attention. When you stop making everything a big deal, you become untouchable. You radiate the kind of effortless confidence that makes a man want to earn a place in your life. Not because you're withholding, but because you genuinely understand your worth. And a woman who understands her worth never waits anxiously for a man's attention. She is the attention. 5. Spend time alone to build inner strength. There is a difference between being alone and being lonely. One is a choice, the other is a fear. Some women embrace solitude with grace while others run from it, filling the empty spaces of their lives with distractions, relationships, constant plans, endless scrolling, just to avoid sitting with themselves. But here's the truth. If you can't stand being alone, it's not because you need someone. It's because you haven't yet built a life that you truly love. Many women stay in relationships not because they are deeply in love, but because they are afraid of the silence that comes after. They confuse companionship with fulfillment, mistaking presence for purpose. They believe that being single is a waiting period, a temporary state until the right man arrives to bring meaning to their life. But the strongest women understand something different. Being alone is not a burden. It is an opportunity. Seneca once said, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." If you fear solitude, it is not solitude itself that scares you, but the thoughts and emotions you have been avoiding. But once you confront them, once you learn to be at peace in your own presence, you unlock a kind of freedom most people will never experience. Imagine yourself as a beautiful home. If that home is empty and abandoned, you will be desperate for someone to move in, to fill the space, to give it purpose. But if you decorate it with love, with rich experiences, with a foundation built on self-respect and independence, then anyone who enters is simply a guest. They are welcome, but never needed to make the home feel complete. Mia used to believe that happiness came from being with someone. She hated eating alone, dreaded weekends without plans, and always felt uneasy if too much time passed without someone texting her. She convinced herself that life was meant to be shared, that solitude was unnatural. So she kept herself busy. She moved from relationship to relationship, clinging to men not out of love, but out of fear of the alternative, being alone. Then came the heartbreak that forced her to stop running, the kind that left her staring at the ceiling, questioning everything. The kind that stripped away every distraction, leaving her face to face with the one thing she'd been avoiding, herself. At first, the silence felt unbearable. She wanted to fill it, to escape it, to do anything but sit in it. But something inside her whispered, "Stay." So she did. She made a decision, 1 year without dating, without chasing, without searching for validation. A year dedicated to herself. She booked a solo trip, something she never thought she would do. She walked through the streets of new cities, with no one to answer to but herself. She tried new things, learned how to cook, and took up painting. She sat at cafes with a book, no longer caring if people saw her sitting alone. She realized that the discomfort she once felt had nothing to do with being single. It had everything to do with not knowing who she was outside of a relationship. And something incredible happened. The loneliness faded. The desperation disappeared. She didn't just tolerate being alone, she began to love it. She found a rhythm, a peace, a strength she had never known. And when she finally met someone, she was different. She didn't need him to make her feel loved. She already loved herself. She didn't need his attention to feel valuable. She already knew her worth. She wasn't afraid to lose him because she had already built a life so full, so beautiful, that anyone who entered it was simply an addition, not a necessity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "He who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe." A woman who is truly content in her own company carries an energy that is rare, magnetic, and unforgettable. She does not settle for relationships that diminish her. She does not cling to men who give her breadcrumbs of attention. She does not fear walking away. When you embrace solitude, you no longer look for a man to fill the gaps in your life. You stop approaching love with desperation and start approaching it with confidence. You stop being the woman who waits anxiously for a text and instead become the woman who is too busy living to notice when it arrives. If you fear losing someone, ask yourself, what are you really afraid of? Is it the loss of him or the loss of the version of yourself that only exists in his presence? Because the strongest women do not dissolve when a relationship ends. They remain, radiant and unwavering. They know that their worth is not tied to being chosen because they have already chosen themselves. When you are happy alone, you no longer fear loss. You do not grasp, you do not chase, you simply are. And that is why he will chase you. Not because you need him, but because you don't. 6. True confidence is irresistible. Confidence is quiet. It doesn't beg, it doesn't chase, it doesn't scream for attention. Instead, it is felt. It is the energy of a woman who knows her worth, who walks into a room not wondering if people will notice her, but knowing that she belongs wherever she stands. Yet so many women mistake confidence for external validation. They think confidence is looking a certain way, saying the right thing, or getting a man's attention. They measure their desirability by how quickly he texts back, how often he compliments them, how much effort he puts into pursuing them. But real confidence isn't about securing a man's approval. It's about not needing it in the first place. Epictetus once said, "How long will you wait before you demand the best for yourself?" A woman who truly understands her worth does not wait for anyone to recognize it. She does not shrink herself to fit into a man's life. She does not bend her boundaries to accommodate his inconsistencies. She does not hesitate to walk away when she knows she is being undervalued. There is something undeniably attractive about a woman who does not over-explain, who does not over-apologize, and who does not second-guess her place in someone's life. She moves with a kind of certainty that makes people take notice, not because she demands attention, but because her presence carries weight. She does not cling. She does not force. She does not beg. Imagine two women. One is waiting by her phone, analyzing every text, wondering if she was too much or not enough, measuring her confidence by how a man treats her. The other, she is out living. She is laughing with friends, working on her passions, and fully present in her own life. She is the fire, not the moth. And men, instinctively, are drawn to fire. Men do not chase women who are desperate for their attention. They chase the women who are whole within themselves. The ones who do not need to be chosen, because they have already chosen themselves. The ones who do not need to be validated, because they already know their worth. The ones who, even when they love deeply, never lose sight of who they are. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A person's worth is measured by the worth of what they value." If you value yourself, you do not lower your standards. You do not beg for love. You do not make excuses for inconsistency. A high-value woman does not fear losing a man, because she knows that no relationship is worth losing herself over. Think of a garden. A woman who does not know her worth is like a garden that waits for someone else to water it, to tend to it, to make it bloom. But a confident woman, she cultivates herself. She plants her own seeds, nurtures her own soil, and lets herself grow wildly and beautifully, so that when someone enters her life, they do not complete her. They simply admire what she has already built. And that is the paradox of attraction. The less you need someone, the more they want to be around you. The moment you stop chasing, you shift the energy. He starts wondering why you are so unbothered. He starts noticing the way you carry yourself. He starts wanting to be around you. Not because you need him, but because you don't. But confidence is not arrogance. It is not a game. It is not pretending to care less when you actually care too much. It is the deep, unshakable understanding that your happiness does not depend on someone else's presence in your life. It is knowing that whether he stays or whether he goes, you remain whole. A woman who embodies this energy is unforgettable. She does not get lost in a relationship. She does not mold herself to fit someone else's expectations. She does not wait for love to find her. She lives so fully that love becomes a natural extension of the life she has built. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." And in love, bravery is not in chasing. It is in knowing when to walk away. It is in having the courage to be alone, rather than settle for a love that requires you to diminish yourself. It is in knowing that true confidence is not in being chosen. It is in never doubting that you are already enough. Think of the ocean. It does not beg the waves to return. It simply exists in its vastness, in its depth, in its quiet, undeniable power. And that is how you should move through love. Effortlessly magnetic, unshaken by temporary tides, a force that does not need to prove itself, because its presence alone is enough. Emotional control. Decide what truly matters. Feelings can be powerful, but they should never overpower you. It's easy to let emotions dictate your day, to allow a single unanswered call, a change in tone, or a shift in attention to send your mind spiraling. One moment you're feeling good, then suddenly doubt creeps in. Why didn't he text back? Did I do something wrong? And just like that, your energy shifts, your confidence wavers, you lose control. not of the situation, but of yourself. This is where emotional detachment becomes your strength. Not detachment in the sense of being cold or uncaring, but in the Stoic sense, understanding that you have power over your reactions. You do not need to let external events, especially those beyond your control, dictate how you feel. When you master emotional control, you stop living at the mercy of another person's actions. Epictetus once said, "Any person capable of angering you becomes your master." And isn't that what happens in love? When your emotions rise and fall based on how someone else treats you, you are no longer in control of your own happiness. But when you learn to step back to question whether something truly matters, you regain your power. Imagine you are a tree in the middle of a storm. The wind howls, the rain pours, but the tree does not fight the storm. It bends, it sways, but its roots are deep and it does not break. A woman who has mastered her emotions is like this tree. No matter what happens around her, she remains grounded. She does not crumble when a man pulls away. She does not chase validation. She understands that her peace is hers to protect. Nina used to let small things ruin her day. If the man she liked didn't call, she spent the entire day feeling off balance. If he took too long to text back, her mind immediately went to worst-case scenarios. It wasn't just disappointment, it was personal. She internalized every little change in his behavior as if it were a reflection of her worth. But one day, she asked herself a simple question. Why am I letting someone else control my emotions like this? She made a decision. No more overanalyzing. No more letting her happiness depend on a man's attention. Instead of waiting on the phone, she went out for dinner with friends. Instead of replaying conversations in her head, she focused on work, her hobbies, on her goals. The more she chose herself, the more she realized how much time she had wasted on unnecessary worry. And something interesting happened. The less she stressed over him, the more he seemed to notice. He started calling more, checking in, wanting to see her. But by then, Nina had changed. She no longer felt the need to grasp for his attention, because she had already found something far more valuable: emotional freedom. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is the foundation of emotional detachment. It does not mean you don't feel, it means you don't let feelings control you. It means understanding that not every delay, every silence, and every shift in a man's energy is worth your peace. Think of the ocean. The waves crash, the tides rise and fall, but the ocean itself remains vast, deep, undisturbed. A woman who has mastered emotional control is like that. She feels everything, but she is ruled by nothing. She is not easily swayed, not easily shaken. And this, more than anything, is what makes her unforgettable. Men respect women who respect themselves. A woman who does not crumble at every sign of uncertainty is a woman who commands admiration. She does not text in panic. She does not need constant reassurance. She carries herself with a quiet confidence, an inner calm that draws people in, not because she plays games, but because she truly understands her worth. When you detach from unnecessary emotional turmoil, you reclaim your time, your energy, and your peace. You start focusing on things that actually matter: your ambitions, your passions, your well-being. And as you do, you become the kind of woman who radiates self-assurance. The kind of woman a man does not want to lose. And the irony? The moment you stop needing him to validate you is the moment he starts chasing you. Because real attraction is not about proving your worth. It's about knowing it. 8. Prioritize yourself first. A woman who puts herself first is not selfish, she is wise. She understands that love is not about losing herself in another person, but about growing into the best version of who she is. When she prioritizes her well-being, she stops waiting for a man to give her happiness. She becomes her own source of fulfillment, and that makes her irresistible. Too many women believe that prioritizing themselves means pushing love away. They have been conditioned to think that the more they give, the more valuable they become. That if they are always available, always accommodating, and always putting their needs before theirs, they will be loved more. But that's not how attraction works. The more you sacrifice yourself for someone, the easier it is for them to take you for granted. The moment you put a man above yourself, you lower your value in his eyes. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, A person's worth is measured by the worth of what they value. If you don't value yourself, how can you expect someone else to? If you keep giving your time, your energy, and your love to someone who does not reciprocate, you are teaching them that you are willing to accept less. Picture yourself as a candle. If you let yourself burn entirely just to give someone else light, what happens? You disappear. A woman who understands her worth knows that she must keep her flame alive. She does not drain herself to keep a man interested. She does not give all of her energy to someone who only gives her half of theirs. She knows that a real, healthy love will never require her to dim her own light. When you make yourself a priority, something shifts. You stop saying yes to things that drain you. You stop tolerating disrespect, inconsistency, and half-hearted effort. You begin choosing relationships, romantic or not, that uplift you rather than exhaust you. And as you do, men notice. Because a woman who prioritizes herself radiates a kind of effortless confidence that is impossible to ignore. Think of the difference between a woman who is always available and one who has a full, exciting life. The first woman drops everything when he calls. She cancels plans. She rearranges her schedule. She makes herself small to fit into his world. The second woman? She keeps living. She enjoys her time with him, but she does not abandon herself for him. She maintains her friendships, her passions, and her routines. And that is what makes her so magnetic. She is not waiting to be chosen. She is already complete. Men are wired to be drawn to what they perceive as valuable. A woman who values herself sends a powerful message. She is not desperate. She is not seeking approval. She is not bending over backward to be loved. She is love. Love for herself, love for her life, love for the things that make her soul come alive. And a man who recognizes her worth will rise to meet her there. Seneca once said, "You must live for yourself, not for the opinion of others." A woman who puts herself first does not ask for permission to live the way she wants. She does not dim her ambitions to make someone else comfortable. She does not shrink her voice to avoid conflict. She stands firmly in who she is, knowing that the right man will admire her strength, not be intimidated by it. When you prioritize yourself, you stop chasing people who don't appreciate you. You stop making excuses for bad behavior. You stop giving endless second chances to men who do not deserve them. You no longer waste your energy overthinking what he's thinking, what he wants, or what he feels, because you are too busy building a life so fulfilling that whether he stays or goes does not change your happiness. Think of a queen. Does she abandon her throne to run after a knight? Does she plead for someone to see her value? No, she rules. She holds her head high. She moves through life with certainty, with purpose. She attracts admiration, respect, and devotion, not because she demands it, but because her very presence commands it. When you stop waiting for someone else to put you first, you reclaim your power. You become the kind of woman who does not seek love to complete her, but who welcomes love as a beautiful addition to an already fulfilling life. And the irony? The moment you prioritize yourself, the right man will chase you. Not because you made him, but because he recognizes that a woman like you is rare. Detachment is not about rejecting love. It's about reclaiming yourself. It's about understanding that your worth is not tied to how a man treats you. That your confidence should not waver with his attention. That your happiness is not dependent on whether he stays or leaves. Every time you choose yourself, you strengthen your power. When you detach from outcomes, you free yourself from anxiety. When you embrace solitude, you discover your own depth. When you stop making every small moment in love a defining event, you protect your peace. And when you stand firm in your value, you become the kind of woman who does not chase but is pursued. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That strength comes from within. It is built every time you refuse to beg for someone's love. Every time you walk away from what does not serve you. Every time you remind yourself that you are already whole. Confidence is not a performance, it is a practice. It is something you cultivate daily. The way you speak to yourself, the way you carry yourself, the way you let go of what does not align with your highest self. If you commit to this path, everything changes. You stop wasting time on people who do not see you. You stop overthinking texts, overanalyzing actions, and giving your energy away so easily. So ask yourself, what is one thing you can do today to prioritize yourself? How can you start showing up as the woman who knows she is enough? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story matters, and your journey to self-worth is one worth telling.